in a dream match. Even Sting versus Hulk Hogan on WWE television, or Sting versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. I would love to see that. Sting versus Hulk Hogan in a WWE ring, never done before. That would be awesome, seeing them work together in a storyline, especially based off their history with the New World Order, WCW, all the times they wrestled at the legendary Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. It would be awesome if WWE brought back the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view and had Hogan versus Sting for the first time in over 15, 16 years. If WCW can reincarnate the Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan match at Halloween Havoc back in 1998, the first match that was 8 years in the making from their match in 1990 at WrestleMania 6 in Toronto. Everybody was there for that, so WCW redistributed with Ted Turner Television and backing the match. They can redistribute Sting versus Hogan. There's really no reason why. Yes, Hogan had a couple of injuries, including a major back injury that kept him out of the ring for a while, but I would love to see that, or Sting versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. The door of opportunity is really wide open when you talk about Sting coming back to promote the game or to have some dream matches on WWE television. But when it comes down to it, I really don't think Sting is going to come back to promote someone like Alexander Rusev or Jack Swagger or Alberto Del Rio. He's definitely not going to get in the ring with Zack Ryder or Santino Marella anytime soon with the legend that Sting is. He is definitely one of the top 10 greatest of all time, and everybody wonders whatever happened to Sting. I know he's been making appearances on indie wrestling shows a lot of the time, and he's wrestled on TNA for a number of years. He's been champion down there for them a number of times. He's had the opportunity to wrestle Kurt Angle, but the thing is, not everybody is a Kurt Angle. Not everybody can say they've wrestled every big name at least once and defeated every big name in professional wrestling. So after defeating every big name in professional wrestling, Kurt Angle kind of has that distinction of having the opportunity to wrestle Sting more than anybody when it comes to TNA wrestling or on the independent level. But when it comes to matches like Sting versus Triple H or Sting versus John Cena, these matches have never happened, and John Cena probably would never have been given the opportunity to wrestle Sting if Sting had never signed a contract to have his name included on the roster of 2K15. And it would be a great way of putting over the video game with John Cena on the cover if we saw Cena versus Sting. It would be a match that would probably only just happen once or twice, and then after those two matches were offered to wrestling fans, it would never happen again. It would go in the archives of WWE back in the vault and would be a match that wrestling fans would remember through the ages. Really, any opponent you could throw at Sting would be a match that would be remembered through the ages. I have so many memories of the Sting character, and I'm sure you have a lot of memories of the Sting character. And if you want to share those memories with us, you can on our Facebook page at HEW Entertainment and on our Twitter at Jonathan Clarke 1. The bottom line is Sting is definitely one of the greatest of all time for everything he's given to the professional wrestling business. Steve Borden has done it all, and there's really no reason for him to come back full time with WWE. He'd probably come back under a Legends contract, kind of like how The Rock and Brock Lesnar have these Legends contracts when they can wrestle whenever they want against whoever they want. They only have to wrestle at least 3 or 4 times a year. In the case of Brock Lesnar, who is your world champion now, he only has to wrestle every so often. He comes back every so often for a fight against a big name, and he usually wins the matches. That's usually how it's worked out, with a scattered loss thrown in there every once in a while. And I see Sting coming back with a Legends contract, and probably one of the biggest Legends contracts WWE have ever given to a legend like Sting. And he would be a big part, I think, of the WWE network when it comes to WCW footage, taking a look at Nitro like they're doing, offering you for the first time ever every episode of Monday Night Nitro. And God knows we have seen so many moments on Monday Night Nitro. They went from 1 hour to 2 hours to 3 hours. They were the first wrestling show to go to 3 hours back in the late thousands. It was awesome. Prior to them going out of business, they went to 3 hours, and they gave us so much action. It will be awesome seeing Sting hosting a DVD on WCW or hosting something on the WWE network, and I see him coming back to do something like that. Maybe not wrestling all the time, but being there enough to be noticed and to have conversation talked about in the way of Sting. And if Hulk Hogan can come back as the host of WrestleMania 30, then Sting can come back and have the same kind of publicity that Hogan got when they announced that Hulk Hogan was going to be the host of WrestleMania 30. It made so many headlines for professional wrestling when it came to news programs and newspapers. Everybody was talking about the return of Hulk Hogan, saying that Hulk Hogan had come home for the first time in years. Kind of like how when The Rock and Hogan came back, they got a lot of publicity, and Sting probably would have a lot of publicity when it came to newspapers, news television programs. Everybody will be talking about it. There have been articles thrown up even on WWE.com on the career of Sting because of how WWE, of course, purchased the name of WCW and was able to use Sting footage for some previous DVD and Blu-rays they have released over the years. One of the biggest moves and smartest moves that WWE ever made. So even when he's not there, they're still showing Sting footage on WWE programming and the network. It is amazing that Sting's legacy has never been forgotten, even though we don't hear or see from him all the time like we probably would want to see. I know Sting has gone to the independent level. He's done a lot down there. He wrestles on the weekends sometimes for independents and throughout the week, and sometimes he appears on television shows like TNA, who have a deal with Spike TV. And now that Spike TV have an HD channel, TNA is now in high definition, so that's an added bonus for TNA. So that gives Sting a reason to keep coming back to shows like TNA. But I think he has an even bigger reason now to go to WWE with the streak of The Undertaker ending at WrestleMania, because The Undertaker needs to be convinced to return. It really pisses me off that it was Brock Lesnar who ended the streak of The Undertaker, because now with the streak ended, Sting can also be looked at as not having a reason to go to WWE, because you would think that he would have wanted to be the guy, one of the possible candidates to end The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania. It would have made perfect sense if Sting were to debut in the match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30 earlier this year and defeat The Undertaker. But now with the streak gone, it can go one of two ways. Sting might not want to come back to fight The Undertaker, or he may want to come back to fight The Undertaker to give wrestling fans this dream match and give The Undertaker a reason to come back. God knows Mark Calloway has done so much for professional wrestling. Why not give us one more match? If Hulk Hogan can do it with Shawn Michaels in 2005, if John Cena and The Rock can do it 2 years in a row at WrestleManias 28 through 29, then Sting can do it with The Undertaker, and it would be an amazing match, as I said here earlier on, that will be remembered through the ages. We have done a video series on our YouTube channel actually on Sting versus The Undertaker, and we'll probably be talking about more dream matches with Sting over the next few weeks on this radio show as we prepare to close out 2014 and look ahead to the culmination of 2015. If Sting is going to return, I don't see him returning by the end of 2014. If he is going to return, a tentative date for Sting to return will probably be 3 to 4 weeks before WrestleMania, kind of like how Batista returned just about a week before this year's Royal Rumble. And when Batista returned, he was returning with so much promise. He was promised so many things that he never got. He walked out, went back to Hollywood, and I think that Sting will kind of return in the same kind of way Batista will return. Promised all these things. It still remains to be seen if Sting will get all these promises he's been promised. No doubt WWE have approached it many times over the years, kind of like how they've approached Brock Lesnar many times, and finally convincing Brock Lesnar to come back. But I think Sting coming back would give WWE some of the highest ratings they have ever witnessed on television, and definitely some of the highest pay-per-view buy rates. Buy rates for pay-per-views would go through the roof if Sting were to return. And now with him a part of WWE 2K15, the video game series, this is a reason, probably an even bigger reason than ever before, along with having the Undertaker match at WrestleMania, tying in with it significantly. This is the biggest reason of all time for Sting to return. If he's the biggest name on the Legends roster this year for 2K15, bring Sting back. Let's get going with Sting versus The Undertaker, or get going with Sting versus Triple H. Something that wrestling fans will talk about. And even Sting versus Brock Lesnar for the title. That would be an amazing match, even though it's supposed to be about the new talent initiative. I think it would increase pay-per-view buy rates and be one of the biggest pay-per-view matches we have seen in years. And it would be a pay-per-view match that has been rumored for a while that finally would be coming into fruition, probably even before Brock Lesnar versus Batista would come into fruition. The challenge was issued by Batista in 2005. That's what's interesting about the match with Brock Lesnar. The challenge was issued by Batista in 2005, and apparently now it's a pay-per-view match 10 years waiting to happen. Batista versus Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar versus Sting will probably be a dream match that will happen ever before Batista versus Lesnar ever happens, with probably Brock Lesnar winning the match over Batista if it even were to happen. At least Sting would have a chance of defeating Brock Lesnar, and that probably would be the way that it would go if we saw Sting versus Brock Lesnar. Whoever Sting faces first, he's probably going to win against, and then eventually he'll start losing matches. He'll probably wrestle 3 to 5 times a year, kind of like how Brock Lesnar returns every so often for a match and either wins or loses. Most of the time in Brock Lesnar's circumstances, he wins matches with a scattered loss thrown in there every once in a while, and I see Sting falling into the same category, coming back for a match every so often, either winning probably most of the time, and then going on to lose a scattered match, just to say he lost a match to one of the biggest names in the business. And when they do lose, these legends who are under Legends contract with the company to wrestle every 3 to 5 times a year. Usually they lose to a big name. They're not going to lose to a small name like an Alberto Del Rio or Jack Swagger. The only small names they're going to lose to are as small as John Cena or Randy Orton, because they're the ones, the faces of the WWE. At least that's what they're considered to be by management and a lot of WWE fans. It's going to be a long time before we see Sting or The Rock lose to someone like Del Rio or someone like Jack Swagger. They probably will lose to a Daniel Bryan. You can kind of make an exception to a Daniel Bryan character with how much he's gotten over with the WWE fans, but with the exception of maybe John Cena, Randy Orton, and Daniel Bryan. There's nobody going to lose the stature of Sting or The Rock to someone like a Del Rio or a Jack Swagger. It's not going to happen anytime soon. The thing about Sting is the reason why he should be under Legends contract and only wrestle probably 3 to 5 times a year is because of all the contributions that Sting, the Steve Borden individual, has given us over the years. He's done so much for professional wrestling, and even more for companies, even more so than WCW. I mean, he's done everything there is to do. He's been the world champion of every wrestling organization he's competed in. He was one of the greatest U.S. champions of all time. He wrestled against almost every big name that professional wrestling has to offer outside of WWE, including Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. The actual last match of WCW was Sting versus Ric Flair all those years ago, and the emotion that went behind that match was absolutely unbelievable. It was the most emotional broadcast that WCW had ever done in Florida. It was a great match. It lasted about 20 minutes, and people still download that match on YouTube. And Ric Flair still talks about the last match of WCW, and I can't blame him for how incredible it was and the amount of respect that was shown between Sting and Ric Flair, two of the greatest of all time. And definitely Ric Flair will probably get in on a Sting return. If Sting were to return to WWE, Ric Flair would probably come out for an in-ring segment and confrontation with Sting, just as Hulk Hogan would, or somebody that hasn't been seen on WWE television in years, either to confront Sting, just confront him for a segment like they usually do every year for a WrestleMania, or to challenge Sting to a match. I could definitely see Sting versus Triple H, with the name that Triple H has established in the professional wrestling business, and with Triple H has worked with WCW and for Ted Turner back in the early 90s under the tutelage of William Regal. If you ask me, outside of the Undertaker prediction I made here earlier on in the show and have been making for the last several months, who would I see Sting wrestling? I could see Sting wrestling Triple H with the history Triple H has with Ted Turner and WCW.